You're sitting around a fire. It's 2 million years ago. The sun went down an hour ago. Something is moving in the grass. Your whole group has gone completely still. Then, one of your companions trips over a root, flat on his face, right in front of everyone. He gets up, looks around, does the thing where you check if anyone saw. Everyone saw. And then something happens that makes no evolutionary sense whatsoever. From multiple individuals, simultaneously, aimed at a guy who just ate dirt in front of the whole group, a sound comes out. Open-mouthed, shoulders shaking, completely involuntary. Nobody taught them to do that. There was no joke, no setup, no punchline, no culture that had decided falling was funny. There was just a root, a guy, and a sound that erupted out of everyone around the fire, whether they wanted it to or not.
Here's the thing. Laughter doesn't make you faster. It doesn't make you stronger. It does nothing useful for avoiding predators or finding food. It announces your location. It distracts you. It makes your eyes water so you can't see properly. By any obvious metric, making noise when something surprises you is not a survival advantage. And yet, every human culture that has ever existed laughs. Babies laugh before they can speak. Blind children laugh without ever having seen it done. You cannot stop yourself when something is funny enough. Your brain just fires, the sound comes out, and you are a passenger with no say in the matter. So when did this start? Why does it exist at all? And what was it actually for before anyone had a concept of funny? This is the story of how laughter got inside us, and it was never really about the joke.
Before we get to ancient humans, we need to talk about rats, specifically what happens when a scientist tickles one, which is a sentence nobody expected to matter, but here we are. In the late 1990s, a neuroscientist named Jacques Panksepp started doing exactly that. Actual lab rats, actual tickling, actual finger. What he found was that rats produce an ultrasonic chirp at around 50 kilohertz, well above what humans can hear, specifically during play and during tickling. The rats don't just tolerate it, they seek it out. Tickle a rat, stop, and hold your hand still in the cage. The rat follows your hand. It wants more. By every behavioral measure available, the animal is genuinely enjoying this experience, which is not what most people picture when they picture a neuroscience lab. That chirp has the same structural properties as human laughter: rhythmic, repetitive, social. Rats produce it when playing with each other, not when alone, and it activates the same dopamine reward circuits in the rat brain that laughter activates in ours. Panksepp called it the play vocalization, and his argument, which has held up through decades of follow-on research, is that this sound is the direct evolutionary ancestor of human laughter, the same basic neural circuit, the same social trigger, just expressed by an animal that diverged from our lineage somewhere around 80 million years ago.
Rats are not the only ones. Chimpanzees, gorillas, bonobos, and orangutans all produce vocalizations during play and tickling that researchers classify as laughter. Chimp laughter sounds like a panting exhale, rhythmic, breathy, produced specifically during rough and tumble play. It sounds nothing like a human laugh, but the behavioral context is identical in every measurable way. Something surprising happens, it turns out to be safe, and a sound comes out. This changes the entire frame of the question. If you assumed laughter was a product of human culture, something that developed with language or storytelling or the invention of a setup and a punchline, you are off by somewhere between 10 and 80 million years, depending on which animal you're using as your reference point. Laughter is not a cognitive invention. It is a reflex, installed in mammalian neurology long before our lineage existed, inherited the same way we inherited a spine and a fear response and a preference for sweetness. We didn't create it, we received it. Which means the interesting question is not when humans started laughing. It's what happened to a reflex that was already there, and why, in humans specifically, it became something so much more complicated than a rat following a hand.
Here is something you already know but have probably never examined directly. You cannot make yourself laugh. You can fake it. You can produce a sound that passes for laughter. The shoulders, the face, the exhale. And if you do it convincingly in a room full of people, some of them will start actually laughing, which is its own strange phenomenon. But genuine laughter, the involuntary kind, where something catches you completely off guard and your body just takes over, is not under your conscious control. It happens to you. You are a passenger in your own reaction, and the part of you that makes deliberate decisions had no input whatsoever.
The reason is where laughter originates. It comes from the limbic system and the brainstem, structures that are genuinely ancient, shared with mammals going back hundreds of millions of years, and operating largely below the level of awareness. When something genuinely funny happens, the hypothalamus fires, the nucleus accumbens fires, the reward circuitry lights up, and then the exhale comes, the sound comes, the expression follows, all produced by a process that your rational mind had essentially zero involvement in. This is also why you cannot tickle yourself, no matter how hard you try. It's not a dexterity problem. Your cerebellum predicts the incoming sensation before your fingers arrive and sends a signal to the brainstem that amounts to, we already know about this one, and the surprise reflex simply doesn't fire. Laughter requires the world to genuinely catch you off guard. You cannot manufacture the surprise yourself because the part of your brain that would register the surprise already knows it's coming. You are neurologically not permitted to find yourself funny.
What laughter also doesn't do is route through the language centers, Broca's area, Wernicke's area, before it exits your mouth. It is subcortical, meaning it completely bypasses the part of you that thinks before acting. This is why laughter spreads through a room the way it does. When you hear someone else laugh, your mirror neurons fire before your conscious mind has decided whether anything is actually funny, and you're already starting to smile before you've made any choice about it. The laugh is contagious in a way that a deliberate statement never can be, because it never asks permission from the thinking mind. None of this is an accident. Reflexes this deeply wired, this universal across every human population ever studied, this resistant to conscious override, they exist because they were solving a real problem. Natural selection does not maintain expensive neurological machinery for no reason across millions of years. If this sound was just a harmless byproduct of play with no function, it would have been quieted a very long time ago. The question is, what problem it solved?
Think about what a group of our ancestors actually needed to communicate before language existed. Danger was easy. Screams work. Alarm calls work. Wide eyes, sudden movement, every hair on your body standing up. Danger has a rich, fast, universal vocabulary that requires no words and has been working effectively for around 500 million years. Safety was the hard problem, and nobody talks about it. How do you tell your group the thing that just startled everyone is fine? The noise was a branch falling, not something approaching. The stranger walking towards us is not hostile. Stand down, breathe, we're good. There is no word for this. There is no gesture that reliably carries it. And for a group of social primates living in close proximity, getting this wrong, staying locked in threat response mode when the danger has already passed, is genuinely expensive. It burns energy, disrupts coordination, keeps the group tense and vigilant when it needs to be resting or foraging or cooperating.
In 2005, researchers Matthew Gervais and David Sloan Wilson published what has since become the most cited theory of laughter's evolution. Their argument was that it developed in two distinct stages. The first was what they called Duchenne laughter, the involuntary, spontaneous vocalization produced during play, the same one you find in rats and chimps. This was the original signal. What it communicated in the most direct neurological way possible was, this is not a real threat. This is surprising but harmless. Everyone around you can stand down now. That first stage predates our species by millions of years and is not uniquely human. What became uniquely human was the second stage. As our ancestors developed larger and more complex social groups, and eventually the early forms of language, laughter got recruited for something well beyond signaling physical safety. It became a social technology, a way to manage relationships, signal alliance, navigate status hierarchies, diffuse tension, mark group membership. You laugh with people you trust. You laugh at the same things as people who see the world the way you do. Over hundreds of thousands of years of group living, laughter became woven into every social situation where the underlying message is some version of, I am not a threat. We are okay. We are the same kind of thing.
This is why laughter at funerals is not strange, why nervous laughter exists, why people laugh during arguments and uncomfortable silences and job interviews. The reflex that started as a safety signal got layered over and repurposed, recruited for every situation that needed it. That's still what it's doing, every time. Around 2 billion years ago, something changed in the size and structure of hominin social groups. Early Homo started living in larger bands, more individuals, more relationships, more alliances that needed active maintenance, more status to track, more trust to establish and calibrate.
The cognitive load of managing all of that without language to help was significant. In other primates, bonding at social scale is handled primarily through grooming. The physical contact triggers endorphin release in both individuals simultaneously. It is not hygiene, it is pharmacology. The fur picking is just the delivery mechanism for a bonding chemical that cements relationships and registers trust in the nervous system of both parties involved.
The fundamental problem with grooming is that it is one-to-one. You can only maintain contact with a single individual at a time. Robin Dunbar, the anthropologist who established the link between primate brain size and social group size, identified this constraint as the ceiling on how large primate groups can get before they begin to fragment and fall apart. His hypothesis, which has accumulated substantial supporting evidence over the years, is that laughter solved this problem for humans in a way that no other primate managed. A shared laugh produces endorphin release in every person laughing simultaneously. Everyone in the group who finds something funny at the same moment gets a dose of the same bonding chemical that grooming delivers, at the same time, at range, without physical contact. You can bond with 8 people at once with a single moment. You simply cannot groom 8 people at once. Nobody has that many hands, and the math doesn't work anyway.
This is why genuine shared laughter feels different from just talking. When you laugh really with another person, not a social performance, not polite acknowledgement, but actual surprised, involuntary laughter at the same moment, the neurochemistry is nearly indistinguishable from physical contact. Oxytocin releases, cortisol drops. The systems that register closeness and trust register the shared laugh as evidence of alliance, even though no one touched anyone. It is a hug that works at distance, in groups, and without asking permission from your conscious mind. Laughter is not a feature of human social life. It is load-bearing. Here is a distinction that gets lost, and it matters. Laughter and humor are not the same thing. Laughter is ancient. It predates our species by millions of years. It is a reflex, not an invention, and it was running long before anyone had a concept of a joke. Humor is something else entirely, the ability to deliberately construct a situation or statement that causes laughter in someone else, and humor arrived much, much later than the laugh did.
To make something funny on purpose, you need what psychologists call a theory of mind. You have to be able to model what another person expects, to hold their anticipated mental state in your head, and then engineer a precise violation of it at the right moment. Cognitive scientists call the mechanism incongruity resolution. Something is funny because it sets up a clear expectation and then breaks it in a way that turns out to be harmless. The brain rushes to close the gap between what it predicted and what actually happened, and when the resolution lands cleanly, the reflex fires, the laugh comes out. But notice what that requires. You have to think about what someone else is thinking, predict how that thinking will unfold over the next few seconds, and time a disruption to it exactly right. That is a sophisticated and recursive cognitive operation that most animals show no evidence of being capable of at all.
Our early ancestors almost certainly couldn't do it either. The laugh reflex was there, running exactly as it runs in a chimp, exactly as it runs in a rat. But deliberately engineering a situation to produce that response in someone else requires a level of social cognition that was probably not available 2 million years ago around any fire. The machinery for the sound existed long before the machinery for the joke. The oldest physical evidence we have for anything resembling intentional humor dates to roughly 40,000 years ago. Cave art with figures drawn in deliberately absurd proportions, carved objects that seem to depict ridiculous scenarios, small visual jokes left in stone by someone who apparently wanted a specific reaction from whoever found them next. These appear at almost exactly the same time as personal ornaments, abstract symbols, and long-distance trade in decorative objects, all of which require the same underlying cognitive capacity, the ability to represent one thing as standing in for another, to hold a fiction in your mind while knowing it's a fiction, to model someone else's reaction to something that doesn't exist yet. What this means is striking. For the vast majority of human evolutionary history, for most of the hundreds of thousands of years our ancestors were walking upright, using tools, and living in complex social groups, laughter was everywhere, but jokes did not exist. The reflex was running constantly. The culture had not yet caught up to it. And then, at some point, in some moment that we cannot locate or name, someone figured out that you could manufacture the surprise.
that you could be the cause of the sound, not just a recipient of it, that you could aim the reflex at a specific person and produce it deliberately. That moment was the invention of comedy. It happened, like most important human inventions, without anyone understanding what they were creating.
We treat laughter like it's the opposite of serious things. Comedy goes in one box, real life goes in another. Laughter is what happens when nothing important is happening. But that's completely backwards. Laughter is one of the most neurologically complex, biologically consequential behaviors humans produce. It releases endorphins and oxytocin simultaneously, it suppresses cortisol, it measurably improves cardiovascular outcomes, pain tolerance, immune response, and recovery time. The research is not thin, it is consistent, replicated across decades and populations. We built hospitals and pharmacies and trained therapists. And underneath all of that infrastructure, a mammalian reflex older than our species is still running quietly, doing work that medicine can measure, but hasn't figured out how to fully replicate.
The part nobody has solved, and this is genuinely worth sitting with, is why specific things are funny. We can map the neural mechanism with reasonable precision. We can identify the conditions under which the reflex fires. We can predict, statistically, which categories of events tend to produce laughter across populations. But why that particular joke, in that particular room, from that particular person, lands like a physical impact, while an almost identical setup, slightly different delivery, different moment, lands like nothing at all? That is still genuinely not understood. The science of laughter is solid. The science of funny remains mostly guesswork. Some researchers believe this is because humor is fundamentally about shared context. You can only find something funny if you already understand what was expected, which means every genuine laugh you share with another person is evidence, in the most literal neurological sense, that you were both predicting the same thing at the same moment, that you see the world, at least in the small way, the same.
Which brings you back to the fire. 2 million years ago, a guy fell over, and the people around him laughed, not because they understood slapstick, not because falling had been culturally established as funny, but because something unexpected happened and turned out to be safe, and a very old circuit fired, and the same sound came out of everyone at once. They had all seen the same thing, felt the same thing, made the same sound at the same time. We still don't fully understand why that works. We just know it does.